Hi, and welcome to Your Inside Power, where we are empowering women to learn to use the tools that they have inside of them, inside their beautiful minds, to enable them to live the life of their choice. Today's topic is on worry, doubt, and stress. Oh my. We live in this world that's very negative. And we have to learn how to navigate that in order to create the life that we want. I want to read you a quote by William James. He said, "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another." Isn't it beautiful? He says, it is our choice. Our stress levels, our anxiety, our worry, our doubt all comes from our thinking. And it creates enormous problems. I'm not saying that you don't have problems in your life because of it, but it creates enormous problems. But the beauty is you can shift your thinking. And when you shift your thinking, you're going to change your thought patterns and you're going to change your results. Now, I want to give you some statistics here that I have about stress. Stress is the number one cause of chronic health issues. Our thinking can actually cause our health to become a problem because it starts to break down our bodies and it starts in our thought patterns. So stress can be an enormous problem, and stress from the workplace can be a problem of that stress. So it says here that job stress comes from 46% of the workload. And, in today's economy, a lot of people have had to pick up other people's jobs or do more because of the lack of employees. 28% from people issues, dealing with other people. And that, of course, becomes a problem when we don't understand and realize the different thought patterns people have. And a good way to solve that one is to do some personality studies at your workplace. And I can certainly help you with that. 20% is juggling work and our personal lives, especially women and you have children. I know for me, one of my top priorities when my kids were small was my kids. And they were the top priority over my job. And so that can cause some enormous stress. And 6% goes to job insecurity or security, that you won't have a job. So that's one of the biggest problems that we have dealing with stress. However, the study goes on to say that the number one problem is not job related with stress when it comes to stress. The number one problem is finances. Now, of course, that can be part of your job if you're not getting paid enough where you're working, or you can't find the job that's going to give you the financial means that you need. But what you have to realize is employees struggling to make ends meet, and it's hurting the business because they're so focused on their own personal struggles that impacts the business. And of course, that sets up a vicious cycle, doesn't it? So that's impacting the business are doing well, so they can't pay the employees, and so on and so forth. Here's some other stats that I want to share with you. And these are a little bit old, so it's probably even worse right now. But it's 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And the average credit card debt is over $15,000 with an interest rate of 15%. It's probably more than that right now. The average mortgage people have is $147,000. Student loans, $30,000, and auto loans, $20,000. So it takes, enormous paycheck just to do that, let alone paying for everything else, that has increased because of inflation. And they say that money is the number one cause of divorce. 97% of Americans retire on less than $2,000 a month. Now, I do know a little bit about that because I help a friend do taxes, and I am amazed sometimes at particularly widows who come in and share their tax. And I'm like, how these people, how they live? I don't know how they live. And even some couples that their income's very low, I don't know how they survive on the income. So I do know that I don't know, there's 97% that live under 2,000, but there's a number. When it comes to chronic illness, stress is the number one cause, money is the number one stressor. We've already said that. So those are some of the stats we have. But as William James says, let's go back to that quote, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. So what are the thoughts you're choosing? Are you remaining focused on the thoughts that you do not have or that you cannot get? Or are you focused on what you want? So I'm in a group, and we've been reading various books, and the one book that we've been reading is Think and Grow Rich. And it's not a book that I haven't read before, by Napoleon Hill. I've read it multiple times. In fact, I have multiple copies of it, and I just happened to pull out a new copy because it was the original text from 1937. And so it's the original text they wrote. And so I've been really into this book, and I've been studying it more than I had before. And because of all the work I've been doing, it's making so much more sense. But what I have to share with you is our thoughts are really important, but it's not just our thoughts. It's our beliefs. You see, you can consciously have a thought, and you can consciously say the right thing. But if it's in contrast to what your beliefs are, those beliefs will always win out. They always win out, and that's in your subconscious mind. So what you have to do is you have to learn how to shift your thinking from your beliefs and to build a new belief system. So that's why we don't change our thoughts. If we know that that's going to work, but with the other part becomes the belief, that's what's going on. You see, we can decide, okay, I'm going to earn more money. I'm going to find that job, or I'm going to find that position, or I'm going to start my own business, whatever it is. And you set that goal. But if in your subconscious mind, you do not believe you can have that, that's not going to work. Now, some people say, oh, that's really negative thinking there. That's truth. Because you can never outperform the image you hold. Your subconscious holds the image of the person that you are. Until you change that image and change your thought processes, it's not going to change. And not any amount of positive thinking is going to change that. Yes, you might feel better about it. Positive thinking, you'll definitely feel better about the fact that you still don't have what you want. But to change your results, to change from where you are to where you want to be, you are going to have to change your thoughts and your beliefs. So the conscious mind is where we decide. It's where we communicate with the world through our senses. It's where our intellect is. We can think of an idea. We can originate an idea. We can decide if we, want an idea. That's all in the conscious mind. But the subconscious mind is the one that's connected to infinite intelligence or source energy or God, whatever you want to call it. Napoleon Hill always talks about infinite intelligence because he doesn't want to offend anybody. Some people call it source, and he does mention it sometimes in the book too, source. If you're religious, chances are you call it God. So the subconscious is the one that connects, but not just because you might be religious or just because you might pray doesn't mean you're really connected. Which is why sometimes prayers don't work, because we're not really connected to source. When our conscious mind is in conflict with our subconscious habitual thinking, that's when we have a problem. And that's when we remain in what we call bondage. And we get to this point where we give up. We figure nothing's ever going to change. So this is my destiny, right here where it is. And we give up. And we're just going to call that X thinking. So our conscious mind's thinking X ideas. Our subconscious mind is completely in harmony with those X ideas. And because of that, subconscious controls our actions. Our actions are doing X type actions. And we are in bondage. We are stuck. And all of a sudden you get this idea, maybe I can, maybe you read Think and Grow Rich. And you get this idea, oh, maybe I could find that better job. Maybe I could find that better position. Maybe I could start my own business. And you get this idea and you start to reason with it. You're not really, might be just more wish. And you just start, it's just in your conscious mind, but you're not really making plans to do it. It's just a thought. And you hear people will say, someday I'd like to do this, or someday I'd like to do that, or this would be great if this would happen. And it's just an idea. It's just maybe a passing thought. But all of a sudden, let's say you start really focusing on that thought and you start getting really excited about it. And maybe you start writing down some plans and you start to want to go out and do something different. And as you go out that door, and how do I know this? Because this happened to me. As you go out that door, because you've decided to do something different, all hell breaks loose inside of you, and you are just a mess. Why? Okay, so you have that why idea. Now you start to embed that into your subconscious. And the problem is it's in conflict with all the habitual thoughts. And so now when you go out to do something, you hit this terror barrier. And that terror can feel physically very real. It did for me. Felt very real and very scary. Here I am thinking I can build my own business and I can go out and I can talk to people and I can tell them about this business. And the fear that was inside of me. And I was hitting that wall of terror. Now, when you hit that wall of terror and you bounce back into bondage. And that's what so many people do. They hit that wall of fear, of terror, and they just can't figure out how to move through it. And so they bounce back into bondage, and then they think, well, that didn't work. And then maybe they'll try something else a little bit later and hit that wall again, bounce right back. And it becomes a pattern. But here's the thing. If you can live with that fear, understand what it is, understand that it's real. The fear is real. The terror is real. That feeling that you have inside of you, that struggle that you're having, it's real. But if you can just push yourself to get through that wall to the other side, that's when you find freedom. And that's when you discover more about yourself. And you discover that you can do that. Now, here's the beauty. It doesn't mean that the next time you want to do something different, that fear will no longer be there because you've conquered the terror barrier. No, I'm sorry. That's probably not going to be the case. You get a new idea, you're going to get through the same thing, but here's the beauty of it. When you hit that terror barrier, because you understand it, and you can rely on your memories that, oh, I've done this before, and I went through it, and I survived. And so you go through it next with a feeling of confidence instead of so much fear. So it does get easier. Doesn't mean you're not going to go through it. It just gets easier because your understanding and your awareness has changed. Now, stress is often brought on by that overwhelm. And you definitely have stress when you're in that XY vibration. That's producing a lot of stress. And sometimes we overwhelm ourselves with too much to do, when we have that job-related stress and personal stress, and we combine them and we just get overwhelmed. And so that can cause stress. But sometimes, believe it or not, a little bit of stress is what we need. I know I work really well when I have a deadline. And if I've told somebody I'm going to do something, that's a priority and I'm going to do it. And sometimes, like it or not, I'm more inclined to do something for somebody else before I'm inclined to do something for myself. Because when I tell somebody I'm going to do something and tell them when I'll have it to them, I've set myself a deadline and I feel obligated to get that information to them. And that gives me stress and a little bit of pressure, but that's good for me. So you have to understand, when you have too much stress going on and when you need that bit of stress. Because if I didn't have that, I'd just be way too relaxed and not care maybe to get something done. So I need that little bit of stress. I need that little bit of pressure. And you have to realize that a lot of this, again, is a habitual thing. So you have to know you. You have to know who you are. So you have to have goals. That's a good way to alleviate some of the stress, is to have a really big goal that you want. Now, you might think that it's going to give you more stress. No, actually, it excites you. When you have a really big goal and something you really want to do, there's an excitement there. And sometimes if you can just think of, when you were looking for maybe a new car or a new house, there's a little bit of excitement in the air because it's fun. And so a big goal will give you that exact same kind of excitement. So what you need to do is to have that goal, because a mind that's unoccupied with some great goal or desire becomes very restless and indecisive and bored. So you want to make sure that you have some goal that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. A lot of people that are depressed, that depression is because they have nothing. I remember my dad, when he was going through depression at different times, twice he had pretty bad battles of depression. And it was always times when he did not have enough to do. And his mind became unoccupied because he was a very active person. And all of a sudden for whatever reason, one time it was illness and another time was because he retired, and he just felt like he had nothing to offer the world. And he became very depressed. So that depression can really be a problem, that you just don't have a goal or something that excites you that you really want to do. So how do we deal with that? Meditation. Meditation is a wonderful thing. And here's a couple ideas. Sometimes first time I was told to do this, it was pretty difficult, but let your mind kind of relax and be in a quiet area where you're not going to be disturbed. And I would suggest having a journal out and maybe just start writing some ideas of things that you'd like to do. What kind of goal do you want? What kind of things would you like to accomplish? Who do you want to be? What do you want to have? What do you want to do? And just start letting your mind run wild. Now, let me tell you what happened. I set a timer for 15 minutes to sit there and write my journal. So I started and I let my mind relax. And I was waiting for everything to come to my paper and pen. Nothing happened. it was like my whole mind was blank. And that probably went on for a good week. I was about to give up. I was like, this just doesn't work. And then all of a sudden, one day I started to write. And then the next day I wrote. And then the next day I wrote. Well, then I had to have that timer, not to give me time to okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes. And when I'm done, I'm done. I had to use that timer to get me to stop writing. And here's the beautiful thing. When I was in that state of mind, or when I'm in that state of mind, and then I go back and read the things I've written, I am amazed because I'm not sure where they came from. You see, that's when you're connected with source. Those ideas are not just coming from your mind. You see, when you connect to source energy and infinite intelligence or God, you're connecting with everybody's mind. And the ideas you're getting are so magnificent that when you go back and read them, you're like, where'd that come from? And I didn't realize that for quite a while when I started journaling. And it never occurred to me to read what I wrote until one day I was like, gee, I wonder what I have written. And I was amazed. Now, here's the problem with waiting too long. There were some really good ideas, but the universe likes speed. And so when you act with speed on an idea you've been given, the universe will respond to you. And it will give you another idea and another idea and another idea because they know you're going to take action. So when you start to journal, please read it and act on those ideas that have been gifted to you from the universe and start acting on them. And then you'll keep getting more and more. So think about what you really want and then go about developing a plan. So you have your desire, you have your thinking starting to get right. You start to develop a plan. How am I going to accomplish that? Don't put your plan in so much concrete that you're not willing to change because you're writing down a plan that you think is right. The universe knows more than you know. So you have to be willing to shift and adapt when new opportunities or ideas come to you and not be so steadfast in your plan's the only plan because you don't know everything that the universe knows. But you have to be willing to act on things whether you feel like you're ready or not. I guarantee you won't feel like you're ready because that's our self-image. And so part of this growth towards that really big goal is growth in us. In fact, that's probably more important than the monetary gains that you may get is the growth in you. And sometimes it's an adverse situation. I remember some very adverse situations that I had to go through, and they were painful, and I didn't like them at all. But you know what? If I had to go through the exact same thing all over again, I would do it in a heartbeat because I knew the growth that came out of me from those adverse situations. So I want to read this other quote, and this is by Henry David Thoreau. And it says, if they will advance confidently in the direction of their dream, that means going through that terror barrier, right? You're advancing confidently in the direction of your dream and endeavor to live the life they imagine, using that mental faculty of imagination to build that beautiful dream. They will meet with success, unexpected in common hours. You're going to be more successful than most people will ever get because they don't do those things. So let me read that quote. I'm not going to stop this time. If a person will advance confidently in the direction of their dream and endeavor to live the life they imagined, they will meet with success, unexpected in common hours. So when you get that epiphany, you get that beautiful idea, act on it. Shift your thinking, act on that idea. So my question to you today is, are you ready to give up the stress, the habitual thought patterns and instead invest in a new way of thinking. Because if you are, put in a link there. Let's have a quick call. This is just a 15-minute call. And let me see if I am even the right person for you to be talking to, because your goal, your dream may be so different that I need to find somebody else, or, and I have a lot of connections with people, so maybe I'll help you with that. But let's have that 15-minute chat. Let me help you to maybe figure out your goal is and see if we can map out a plan for you to get there. This is Patricia Stepler with your Inside Power, and I want you to discover all the things you have inside of you to turn your dreams into realities.